Hello. This is a different computer than I usually use. So if people are having a hard time hearing me, let me know now. I have two laptops. They're both old and both need battery replacements. So I have had them shipped off to Apple uh, at different times so I can have one laptop working while the other one is being repaired. This is pretty boring. But anyway, my point is the one I use for the YouTubes is being repaired. So I'm using my really old Apple MacBook Air to do this. That's why you hear the fan running or whatever. How's everybody doing? Pretty shitty day in the stock market. It was the last couple of days of last week were really rough for me. Yesterday was good and today's crap. So you're all caught up. I don't know what order I'm going to go in with things, but I might just jump around, not necessarily in the order that I have listed all of the things I want to talk about. But let's start with Macy's since that blew up. Obviously got that one wrong so far. I bought a lot more Macy's after it blew up. Very speculative. The thesis there is that one of three things or all of the next three things are going to happen. One or more of these three things. One, that the activists will come back with a letter at some point outlining their next steps. I doubt they're going to just walk away completely, though they can't run a proxy until next year because they signed an agreement with them when they put two members on the board. Two, that Macy's will attract another activist that will come out and say that they're planning on overthrowing the board. And three, that Nordstrom, JWN, does get sold. When that happens, it's going to be a catalyst for Macy's. It'll probably go up 5 to 10% on that. So, Macy's is very cheap. They have earnings in September. The last earnings were good relative to expectations. I think it's very asymmetric here at 1650, though, the market's down a lot today. It's not even down that much. So I quadrupled the position size. So it's gigantic. Whether or not it works or not, who knows? I wouldn't call this one of my high conviction ideas. But anyway, I wanted to acknowledge that I got Macy's wrong. Might as well do JWN, Nordstrom, while we're at it. Nordstrom's been really weak the last few days. Just a reminder, my position there is really complex. It's a lot of 1x2 call spreads and butterflies, and I own common. But I really just need any deal between 22.50 and 27.50 to maximize my profits. I've always thought it would be in the $23 to $25 range. I'm not overly concerned with it going down the last 3 days. You're always worried about a leak or some form of a leak, but I still feel very good about that deal happening in the relatively near future. To me, the only reason why that wouldn't happen is if they couldn't get financing, not equity, but debt financing. And I don't think they would have made it to the April 13D if they didn't have debt financing circled, penciled. They had many months to see whether this was feasible or not. So I still think, and things have only gotten better on the debt side since April. So I still feel really good about Nordstrom. The main reason why I wanted to do this was to talk about RCM, which had news today. Today, RCM issued a press release saying that they are giving bidders until July 31st to come up with their best and final bid that's fully financed. I'm a little bit perplexed why they did this. So just to give you a little bit of background here, there are two majority shareholders here that own 30 to 35% of the company each. It's a very rare thing to happen. And one of them, New Mountain, came out back in January saying they wanted to buy the whole company, but they were welcoming Towerbrook, the other shareholder, the opportunity to join them. They said they would pay $13.80 or $13.75, I believe, back in January, February. Everybody thought they were going to have to pay a lot more to get it. Fast forward to very early July, they said they're only going to pay $13.25, and that the other bidders are welcome to roll the individual LPs of Towerbrook, but that they have no agreement with Towerbrook. Stock blew up to like 11, then or to even lower, 10.50, 10.75. Then a week later, Towerbrook came out with a 13D saying that they're going to bid as well for the whole company. with a superior bid. Then the 1325 stock pops. No news for like 10 days. Then you get a news article that TowerBrook is partnering with Clayton, Dubier and Rice, CD&R, to make this bid. Then they followed it up with a 13D saying that they are indeed partnering with CD&R on a superior bid. They're in the process of finalizing it. And that's all we heard. That was last week, I think, on Friday or maybe Monday, is recent. And then you get this press release today saying July 31st, best and final bids due with financing in place. So what does this mean? Okay. Well, first of all, things were going really well behind the scenes with both bidders acting in a constructive manner and moving along as the board wants. You have no need for this public press release. So the public press release is being done for a reason. I can only come up with two reasons why you do this public press release. The first reason is that the board is leaning towards rejecting a inferior bid, either New Mountain's 1325 bid or TowerBrook's incoming bid. And they want to kind of make it very transparent that they try to get the best and final prices from these parties before they reject it, because they're going to get a lot of heat from shareholders about why there wasn't a deal consummated. Okay, so that would be the negative reason why they would come out with this. Another negative reason would be that TowerBrook is hemming and hawing and doesn't have their financing in place, and that's why they haven't bid yet. And this is the board saying put up or shut up. And if they don't put up, 1325 is probably too low and they're going to reject it. But I also can see a positive reason why they would do this. The positive reason would be is that TowerBrook is planning on bidding, and they're going to bid in the next few days. And this is the way of them telling New Mountain that if you don't come up with your bid, we're being very transparent about this process, and we're not going to give you the right to vote down this deal if we are comfortable with whatever TowerBrook's price is. So I'm speaking in gibberish, but my point is that if they don't allow for if they allow for a majority of minority vote and New Mountain votes no, then there's no price that TowerBrook can own this at, because New Mountain always has a voting block in a majority of minority. It's been speculated by me and some friends that the board will waive the majority of minority and deal with whatever lawsuits come their way after it closes, as long as the process is robust, full and fair, and open. And this would be a way of showing lawyers and the market that New Mountain had plenty of notice to raise their bid, and they just decided not to. So they're not going to give them the right to single-handedly block this deal from all of their minority shareholders. If I had to handicap this, I still think there is a very good chance that TowerBrook bids. There's two full weeks between the first 13D and the one, again, I can't remember if it was Monday or if it was Friday. And they now have CD&R listed as a partner in the 13D. If they made it this far, the bid's happening. The only question would be is what the price is going to be. And then you have to ask yourself the question, will it be high enough for the board to accept it? And I think the answer to both of those questions is yes. It will be high enough, and it will be in the $14 to $15 range. I don't know what New Mountain does. I would have rather not seen this press release. I'd rather there be a robust auction going on and behind closed doors, and we just wake up to a deal. I haven't done anything with it today, but that's where I am with today's news. I'd love to hear feedback from anybody else. If anybody else has any thoughts about why they put the press release out today. But anyway, I'll move on to the next thing while you guys, if you guys are interested in talking about it. Let's talk BMYRT a little bit. So BMYRT had news on Friday that the judge has ordered for oral arguments in the motion to dismiss, and he wants oral arguments in mid-August. And he lists all the things you should be prepared to argue in court. And if you read it, it reads pretty bearish to BMYRT holders. Now, I was first a little bit scared about this document, but I've since spoken to 3 different lawyers, and all 3 lawyers told me it's highly normal for there to be oral arguments in a motion to dismiss, and that I shouldn't read anything into the questions that are in the briefing doc. I know from following a little bit of litigation over the years that often the judge is harder on the party that they agree with to try to stress test their case. And I believe that's what's happening here. Let's be clear. So UMB definitely didn't legally become trustee of BMYRT. They never got the DTC sign off in December of 2020. So both parties agree that it wasn't done, I guess, as legally or by the books as it should have been done. Okay. So then of course the judge has to rule whether it can be cured or not. And the only question you have to ask yourself now is, did they cure it appropriately from a legal point of view? And I can't answer that question. I have no idea what the letter of the law is and whether something can be cured or not. I will say that from a bullshit detector perspective, of course, UMB has standing. The majority of CVR holders are funding this lawsuit. UMB is not paying for the lawsuit. The lawyers aren't paying for the lawsuit. It's the owners of the CVR. And if UMB can't bring this lawsuit, then who has to bring it? The previous trustee? So then what? They file and we start all over again? It truly makes no sense. Plus, wouldn't we be able to fire the previous trustee today if we wanted to? And we've already proven through DTC that the holders as of December of 2020 all wanted UMB. And if you did the vote today, it would be even more than 50% because a lot of the CVRs changed hands since December 2020. And the people that sold it had no incentive to go through DTC to affirm their decision back in December 2020. So even if this did get ruled against us, which I think is really unlikely, it wouldn't be the end of the line for the CVR. It would just probably add years to the process, and interest would keep ticking and so on and so forth. So yes, I'm not happy that we're waiting here for a motion to dismiss oral argument, but I don't think it's the end of the world by any means. And I'm told that the CVR is still trading at the same price it was before this happened via Cowen, with about a 225 bid, with stock offered at 250, 260. So it's a little bit, that's if you fully elected and you've pre-funded the lawsuit. Isn't the previous trustee in BMY's camp on this? They clearly were selected by BMY, but we have no idea if the previous trustee would be okay with bringing a lawsuit. They would get paid millions of dollars to do it, just like UMB is doing it now. So, but all that being said, there is a mechanism for changing trustees, and that hasn't expired just because the CVR is no longer listed. So what would happen, I believe, in the worst case scenario is the lawsuit gets thrown out. We do another proxy for UMB to become the trustee, and they refile the lawsuit. Now, all the discovery has all been done already. I just don't know how this would work from a technical perspective. It would be the stupidest thing of all time for the judge to not allow this to be cured, right? He could even allow it to be cured with today's DTC. Just say you have, 3 months to prove that the holders of the CVR today want UMB. I would think he would do it that way. Isn't the previous trustee in BMY's camp on this? I thought the CVR had a defined deadline to trustee. Well, the CVR is no longer active. So the judge will want this to be able to be cured somehow. In fact, his last paragraph in the motion says, assuming this is thrown out on standing, who is the right person to bring this case? And is there a statute of limitations? I just find it incomprehensible that a majority of the CVR holders want this lawsuit. They're funding the lawsuit, and the judge is going to let a trustee that was fired be solely responsible for who can bring in the lawsuit, and then not let the CVR holders select who they want to represent them, which they've already done 4 years ago. It would just be shocking to me, but anything can happen. I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. Let's talk Target Hospitality. There's nothing new there. We're just waiting. I still believe that we'll find out whether we get a deal there in the next 2 weeks before earnings. I think if we get to earnings and they don't kill the deal at earnings, it's great news, and it's very likely that we have a deal. I think if it's going to die, it's going to die at earnings or before earnings, but certainly no later than earnings. At that point, it'll have been 6 or 7 weeks, I think 7 weeks since the Dilly cancellation, or maybe 8 weeks, and then 6 weeks since they issued the updated guidance. And the sponsor and the company will certainly know if there is progress being made in the deal or if it's kaput. So it's going to be a lot of fireworks with Target Hospitality in the next 2 weeks. AMPY, again, a lot of things can happen in the next 2 weeks. They hopefully complete their asset sale. We find out what's going on with the beta drilling. Both those things could send the stock, significantly higher if they're successful. Magnachip. So I want to spend a little bit of time talking about Magnachip. It's been a while since I've talked about it on here. I've been buying a bunch of it since QURE worked. I'll get to QURE too, by the way. Magnachip is pretty fascinating under $5. So this is my biggest loser of all time, dollar-wise and probably percentage-wise, almost certainly percentage-wise. Thesis drift galore. There's absolutely no reason why I should be in Magnachip anymore. And here I am. So Magnachip issued guidance back in March and basically called for them to hemorrhage money this year. Something like $1 a share will be pissed away. And for double-digit revenue growth off of very low bases in each of their divisions, okay? I want to just give you kind of a big picture thought about why I think Magnachip is super interesting below $5. Okay. So if you look at the balance sheet of Magnachip as of 3/31, okay, there is $150 million of net current assets after all liabilities. So all I'm doing is looking at current assets, and I'm taking out all liabilities, current and long-term. Okay. You get to $150 million of that. It's basically, this is a substitute. This is a shorthand for what net cash is. If you liquidated the company, you had to pay off every liability, pension, whatever. Okay. That's $3.84 a share. It'll probably be down to almost $3 by the end of the year with the burn, maybe a little bit more, but let's call it $3. Okay. This excludes $92 million of PP&E that's been heavily depreciated. So it's probably worth more than $92 million. And then another $60 million of prepaid taxes and other assets, okay, which is assuming money good to somebody. That's what it's worth NPV on the balance sheet. That's not an NOL. So that together is $4 a share, okay? There's 39 million shares outstanding. So together, the PP&E and the prepaid taxes and the cash, net of all liabilities, is about $7. That's the book value, okay? Tangible book value. $7 year end versus a $4.90 stock. Okay. So just to get the tangible book value, the stock would have to go up 40%. Okay. But of course, if all they're doing is burning money and the businesses aren't worth anything, it doesn't really matter. So let's look at the two businesses. You have OLED, which used to be the crown jewel, and is the reason why everybody wanted it a few years ago. It's basically doing nothing. It's generating about $40 million a year in revenue, down whatever, 80 or 90% from its peak. Okay. There is a chance that has a real value and that eventually they can get some traction there with China. If they do, it's worth lots of money. Okay. But let's just assume it's worth nothing. It's worth literally zero. This is the asset that the US government blocked them from. This is the reason why this was being sold to China for OLED. And this is the reason why Korea didn't want the Chinese to get it and the US government didn't want the Chinese to get it. Okay. I'm having it worth zero. If you go back to the proxy of 2021, there were a bunch of people that just wanted to buy the power business. Okay. And they offered up to $250 million for it, and they were rejected. It wasn't even negotiated. So back then, if you look at 2019, 2020, Power was doing 175 million in sales in 2019, and they did 165 million sales in 2020. It's projected that Power will do $165 million in sales in 2024. Okay. The business is basically the same business as it was back then. There were multiple buyers that wanted to buy this business for up to $250 million. And again, they weren't even entertained. The company was then sold as a whole, not just Power. $250 million with 39 million shares outstanding is worth $6.40 a share. Okay. If you value OLED at zero and you just use the net cash at year end of $3, and you value the PP&E and the tax asset at zero, you get to a $9.40 stock, a double. It's very hard for me to see how you lose money at $4.90. You would need this company to do nothing for 3 full years. So not just this year, but all of 2025 and all of 2026, continue burning $1 a year and do nothing strategically, either shut OLED down, sell OLED for scraps, or sell Power, which is basically selling the company. Okay. Now, this is a very different company than it was 3 years ago. It's a rounding error. If they sold the company at $10 a share for $390 million, the enterprise value would be like $150 million. Okay. No, $250 million. And that's versus, 1.2 billion when China wanted to buy it in 2021. I think they would easily be able to sell this company to some Korean company for the rounding error that it is and get a decent price for it. So I look at this as a true net now. I think that you have really limited downside, really no downside. And you have any quarter, you might wake up to OLED growing for the first time in 2 or 3 years and the stock going up 50 to 100%. Will it happen next quarter? Very unlikely. But it could happen any of the next 3 quarters. And if it doesn't, I think the company will have to be in a position to do something strategically. Either shut down OLED, sell OLED for scraps, and then sell Power or what have you. One interesting thing is there's been insider buying here going back to last summer. There's insider buying last summer, there's insider buying in December, and there's insider buying in March. And there's been nothing since. And there definitely was a window open after they reported in May. Now, I'm not saying that they're doing anything strategic now, but I do find it interesting that there was stable insider buying from different parties in the summer, in December, and in March, and now there's been nothing. And I definitely don't think it's because the business has deteriorated worse, given where they're at. They did slow their repurchases back down in April and May. So it'll be very interesting to see if they bought back stock, in May, if they bought back stock in May and June and July. They're burning a lot of money. So They could easily afford 25 million more in a buyback. And I'm confident that the board knows this, which would really shrink a lot of the stock. So I'm pretty price sensitive with Magnachip though. If the stock was $6 or $6.50, I wouldn't sell it, but I wouldn't be as excited. I think it's finally at a price point that is really compelling. And can it go down to $4 if they blow this quarter coming up? It definitely could. But that would just make the math even more strong that it needs to basically be liquidated, sold and liquidated. And the board's been changed up a little bit. I know one of the board members. Full disclosure, I went to college with him. I don't know anything that is not public or anything I haven't shared with you guys, but I'm thrilled he's on the board because I trust that in his process, but he's just one board member. But I think it's fantastic he's on the board. I think that's about it with Magnachip. Let's do QURE. So since we last talked on QURE, I have sold about 80% of my position, 85%. Now it's still a big position. It's a 7.5% common position. And I have call spreads in it of about 75 basis points in January of 25 and January 26. But the number of shares I own is 85% less than I did before it went up. So I'm going to de-emphasize talking about QURE in the future. After sleeping on it for a few weeks, I still think it's a really big road ahead for them to get this HD drug approved. I'm not happy with the cash burn. I want to see what happens with what they do with the next phase of cost cuts. The stock's still trading at net cash right now. I can see a place for it in a portfolio, just clearly not the size that it was when it was $4 or $5. I ended up making a lot of money there, but it took a lot of pain and it required making it really big when it went to 5. It was not a fun process, and I'm happy it's over. I think that's everything, right? AQN, I'm waiting for the renewable sale, which should happen hopefully in the next few weeks. I'm big there. I think that's about everything, guys. Let me see what else you got here. TH downside can improve a bit in the new administration. I'm pretty skeptical of this whole thing that a Trump administration is good for Target Hospitality. Target Hospitality, houses migrants contractually by law. So, under 18 unaccompanied minors have to be housed till they turn 18. A Trump administration not only might shut the border down, but might try to get Congress to change that law. And then he also just wants to deport people. He's not really looking to give them a bed and a free meal. So I don't know so much about Target being great under either of these administrations. Just my personal opinion. Do you think there's any signal in the Raymond James analyst saying, wow, there's no wow upside? Headline says something about hidden infrastructure costs. I don't get it. So wow is much smaller for me now. It's like a 5% position. The reason why I shrunk wow is not because of that Raymond James article. It's because when I look back at the process of CNSL, which is the closest comp to what this wow situation is, which is a majority shareholder trying to steal a cable company, a telco company, I did not like the timeline there. So it took them 6 months to go from bid to deal. And then it will be another 15 months to close, given regulatory issues. That is 17 months from bid to close. So even if wow was sold for, $6 or $6.25, we'd be looking at 14 months from now till we got paid, which would be a very big discount from the 6 or 6.25. Once I saw that, I made it smaller. And actually, I sold it below here. I sold it at 485, 490 kind of area, a little at 5. I don't really have a strong view with WOW. It's not going to grow. It's a 5% position. I like these majority minority squeeze outs, as you all know. So that's really my view there. I have no strong view about what the value is there. I like that it's a levered equity. I think that makes it much more likely to get a big bump. Trustee would have those obligations. BMY can instruct trustee to screw holders. The only question is, Glenn, is the trustee doesn't have to sue. They have to come up with a decision that's worth suing. I just can't figure out how they could do that. I'm guessing the trustee would get sued by CVR shareholders. The new trustee, which is the old trustee, saying you're not looking after our interests. We want to fund a lawsuit, and you're not willing to take one on for us. Anyway, all right. I think that's everything, guys. Any other questions? Obviously, BBIO is still huge for me. I don't know what's going to happen with ALNY in a month. I've covered all the names, I think. All right. Let's hope we get some deals, guys. I want Target Hospitality sold at 1080 or more. If Target Hospitality, I will tell you guys this. If Target Hospitality does get sold for 1080 or more, and I've jinxed this every time it's ever happened, so I'm fully aware of what I'm doing. We will do a Vegas trip. QURE worked, which was a gigantic winner for me, saved my year. Target Hospitality is my next biggest binary, and I just need 1080 or more. I would rather it be 1125 or more, but 1080 or more, and we'll plan a Vegas trip in the immediate future after that, the next 4 weeks after it happens. So stay tuned to this YouTube channel if you want to meet me in Vegas and finally celebrate the years of trench warfare we've all gone through with all these names. All right, everybody take care. See you next time.